everybody, and welcome to another edition of Facebook Live with Ken Raggio. Tonight's subject, Trump plans to divide Jerusalem. What's that all about? I have a lead story from the Jerusalem Post here I'm going to be talking about in just a minute. It's got some pretty stunning, pretty shocking, pretty amazing information in it. And of course, anybody knows that anything that happens to Jerusalem is going to have an effect on Bible prophecy or the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. So this is something that deserves to be discussed. And so invite your friends to join us very quickly, and we're going to get into this. I'll be leaving early in the morning for a one-week tour. I'm going up to Tennessee and Kentucky to preach for several days. And so I don't know how long this is going to be tonight. I'm going to try to get into it as quickly as I can. It might take a little while, however. There's a lot of stuff here we want to talk about with regards to Bible prophecies. I want to first of all, though, talk to you about my upcoming trip to Israel. Every year I'm trying to go to Israel, and so far for the last several years we've gone every year, usually in the month of November. This year I'm going in October, October the 17th through the 26th. Now that's only, June, July, August, September, October. That's only 5 months away, a little over 5 months away. And we're getting down to the wire on the deadline. I really want you to go. I've got about 15, 16 people that are talking to me about going, and I want to make that 20 if I can, but I need to hear from you right away. We need to get your deposit in by the end of May. We got to have your name on the register and know that you're serious about going. So all of you that have told me you're going, I need to see your application as soon as possible. Anybody else that wants to go, please contact me immediately. Send me a message on Facebook or send me an email at ken@kenraggio.com, ken@kenraggio.com, and I'll get back with you. Or you can go to my website at kenraggio.com and look over on the right-hand column. You'll see the ad there concerning the trip to the Holy Land. That's the 2018 Daniel Prophecies Tour. It's going to be 10 great days, 10 amazing days. If you've never been to Israel, I promise you this is going to change your life, and you need to go. I really believe every believer, every Christian ought to make at least one pilgrimage to the Holy Land of the Bible at least one time in their life. And I'd love for you to go with me. We do an amazing tour for 10 days. We're going to land in Tel Aviv, spend the first night in Tel Aviv. We're going to go up the East Coast there from Jaffa to Caesarea to Haifa to Mount Carmel to the mountain of Megiddo, the Jezreel Valley where Armageddon's going to break out. We're going to go to Nazareth and see Nazareth and Nazareth Precipice. We're going to go down through Cana on the way to the Sea of Galilee. Man, we're going to see everything around the Sea of Galilee. We're going to take a cruise on Galilee. We're going to eat St. Peter's fish out of Galilee. We're going to go up to the Syrian border if it's not too much trouble. And by the way, don't be afraid of going. Now, if the State Department tells us it's too dangerous, then we'll have to cancel the trip. But I don't expect that to happen. It's not happened in many, many years. In fact, my agency that handles this trip has been going over there 40-something years with no incidents related to any kind of war or terror. So you don't need to be afraid of this. All my folks that have been with me in past years will tell you very quickly that you're just as safe in Israel as you are, probably more safe walking the streets of Jerusalem at night than you are in most of the major cities in America. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. So let's go to Israel. We're going to go to Jerusalem, see all the holy sites around Jerusalem. It's going to be an amazing trip. Got beautiful hotels to stay in. All the dinners and breakfasts are included. We'll have a meal, like I said, the St. Peter's fish, a deluxe motor coach, a professional English-speaking Hebrew guide, and it's just going to be a great time. I want you to go. The price is only $3,560 plus tips, which is at least $1,000 less than most of the trips I've been hearing. I've been hearing trips for less than what I've offered for running for $4,800 to $5,800. So $3,560 is really an amazing price, and I don't think you're going to beat that at any time for a 10-day tour. So contact me right away. I want you to go with me to Israel, and we need to hear from you by the end of May. All right, secondly, I want to talk to you real quickly about two of my books. This is my latest book. It's called Treasures of Darkness, How to See the Glory of God in Your Darkest Trials. This is a spiritual book. It talks about God in the spirit world. You know, the things of the spirit are different from the things of the flesh, and the carnal mind cannot see and understand the things of God. To be carnally minded, the Bible says, death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. And this is a serious look into the miraculous dimension of where God dwells and how God works behind the scenes in so many of our difficulties, so many of our troubles and trials. It's an inspiring book. It's a blessing, and I believe that you'll be happy to have this book. It's called Treasures of Darkness. Go to Amazon.com and look it up. Just look up books by Ken Raggio. Search books by Ken Raggio on Amazon.com. I also want to talk to you about this book, The Greatest Doctrines of the Bible. This is my second to the newest book. This is a huge book. It's got over 430 pages in it, and it is all about the greatest doctrines of the Bible, the oneness of God, the new birth, and about almost half of this book is a rebuttal against all the false doctrines that compete with what the Bible really says. And I show you not only are they wrong, but I show you why they're wrong. I show you the scriptures that prove why they're wrong. So if you're facing a lot of contention with people that maybe you're trying to witness to or talk to about God, or if somebody's giving you trouble about what you believe, this book will bless you and help you. It's called The Greatest Doctrines of the Bible, the Oneness of God, and the New Birth. You can find it on Amazon.com, and I hope you go there and get it today. All right. Now, don't forget to subscribe to all my social networks there, Facebook. Follow me here on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter, please. Follow me on Twitter and YouTube especially. We got well over 100 videos, and we're putting new videos up every week. And there's a whole lot of apostolic preaching there, a whole lot of prophecy preaching, and I'm sure you're going to find something there that's going to help you. So when you go look up my YouTube channel, be sure to subscribe while you're there. Also, you can follow me on Google+, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and on Pinterest. I post on all those networks just about every day. So please follow me. Then while you're at my website at kenraggio.com, please sign up for my daily Bible studies by email, and you'll receive one email a day that'll have 4 mini Bible lessons in it, and then once a week you'll get a sermon of the week. All right, let's get into tonight's subject. The subject is Trump plans to divide Jerusalem. Trump plans to divide Jerusalem. Now, I'm not making this up. This comes from the Jerusalem Post. Let me read you the headline from today's paper. This is written by Lahav Harkov. It says, Trump peace deal to make Jerusalem suburb the Palestinian capital. Now, that's big news, guys. Yesh Atid of the centrist party, Yesh Atid is the name of the party. Yair Lapid is the guy's name. He said that Netanyahu agreed to this plan to make Abu Dis, A-B-U-D-I-S, the capital of the future Palestinian state. Now that is explosive news. The Abu Dis neighborhood bordering East Jerusalem will be the capital of the Palestinian state, and U.S. President Donald Trump's planned peace deal between Israel and the Palestine. That's what Yesh Atid chairman Yair Lapid said Monday. Now, I want you to understand, this is not confirmed. This is reported by the Jerusalem Post, but it is not final. And anybody knows that there's a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to call it fake news. I'm just going to tell you that there's a strong rumor out there, and they figured it was important enough to publish and bring it to the public's attention. Mr. Lapid argued that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu must know about this plan and must have agreed to it, which brings up 2 questions, he said. One, is the 2-state solution back on the table? Does the prime minister agree to it? And number 2, is this community of Abu Dis acceptable to Netanyahu as the future Palestinian capital? Now, let me talk about Abu Dis for a minute. This is a community. If you've been with me to Israel, when we stand on the Temple Mount looking eastward, we look across the eastern gate. Directly across the eastern gate is the Mount of Olives. Down in the Mount of Olives there is the Garden of Gethsemane. Of course, the valley there's got all the tombs, the Jewish tombs, the graves there. You'll see Zechariah's tomb. You'll see Absalom's tomb. And then down to the south, if you follow the Kidron Valley down to the south of the Temple Mount, you end up in the city of David. Well, over the hill from the Temple Mount, over the hill, directly to the east is the town of Bethany, and then beyond Bethany are the deserts that lead out to the Jordan Valley and eventually the Dead Sea. And over to the southeast, just over the hill, you can see the barrier wall, the security fence, they call it. It's a 20-foot high cement wall, a 20-foot high cement wall that runs all the way through the city of Jerusalem, and it divides the Palestinian area from the Jewish area. And just over that cement wall, just east of the city of David, is a community called Abu Dis, and it's not very largely populated. The biggest part of it on the south end is pretty sparse. It's more or less wilderness. There's new construction going on in a few areas there, but the population is probably 3,000 or 4,000 in that whole community. But it is a significant place because it's one of the only areas that has really an ancient population. Now, if you go back to say the 1600s, this territory of Abu Dis was only populated by 100 to 200 people. And as late as 1930, I mean, this is after World War II, this is after the Ottoman Empire was defeated, there was less than 2,000 people that lived in this whole area. So this has never, in all of history, Abu Dis has never been a major city. All it is a little community. And today it's less than 3,000 people. Well, maybe 3,500 people live in this area. But it has one significant thing about it, is that there is a Palestinian headquarters in this office. And there are some people who have expressed in conjecture over the last several years that perhaps this Palestinian office might end up being the headquarters or the capital of a new Palestinian state. Now, I want to go backwards a little bit and say to you that this town of Abu Dis is not by any means certain to become the capital of East Jerusalem. First, there's a whole lot of variables here that you have to talk about. Number one, nobody is on the record as saying officially that there is even going to be a two-state solution. The two-state solution is still on the table, but it's not a given in anybody's book that I know of. There's a lot of people fighting for it, and there's a lot of people fighting against it. And they're on both sides of the fence. There's people in Washington for it and people in Washington against it. People in Israel for it and against it. People all over Palestine for it and against it. So, I'm of the opinion that this two-state solution is not going to come by political means. It's probably going to have to come by war. And one of the principal things that I go by is found in the book of Daniel, chapter 11 and verse 39. Let me look that up right quickly, because the book of Daniel tells us that the man of sin is the guy that's going to divide this land for gain. Let me read you this verse in Daniel 11:39. The Bible says, "Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain." Now, you'd have to go back to some of my previous videos or some of my articles on my website to understand that the Bible tells us there is going to be an Assyrian man of sin that's going to rise up in the last days. He's the guy that's going to commit the abomination of desolation on the Temple Mount in the middle of Daniel's 70th week. And this man is a terror. The Bible said he's a king of fierce countenance, understanding dark sentences. There's a whole lot to be said about this guy, and I don't have time to teach a whole lesson on that. But so this Assyrian, I have had a lot of speculation that this man up in Turkey, his name is Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He's the president of Turkey. He's been in power now for many years. He was originally the mayor of Istanbul, and now he is up for the second election, which is going to happen just like a month away from now. And he's campaigning really all over Europe, all over the Middle East he's trying to get Turks all over the world to rally for him. And if he wins this election, and a lot of people think he will, he's going to become probably the most powerful dictator on earth. He's going to put Kim Jong-un to shame, because this guy is going to show himself to be the meanest dude since Adolf Hitler. And I think he's going to make Hitler look nice before it's all over with. This guy hates Israel. He is the anti-Semite of anti-Semites, and he wants to destroy it and wipe it off the map. And he's calling all Muslims all over the world. In fact, just yesterday, he had an emergency meeting in Istanbul with the 57 Arab nations of the Organization of Islamic Conference, the OIC, and he's telling them again and again, we've got to form a Muslim army. We've got to take over this Palestinian crisis. We've got to protect these citizens in Gaza. We've got to stop Israel from committing genocide against Palestinians. We've got to consecrate this land, in so many words. We've got to take this land and give it to the Palestinians. And I'm going to tell you something. Iran is a threat. Anybody knows that. Hezbollah is a threat. Hamas is a threat. Fatah is a threat. But there's nobody, in my opinion, that's going to cause more nightmares and more trouble for Israel and for the United States before this thing's over with than this guy from Turkey, and his name is Erdogan. So you need to keep your eyes on him. And the Bible said this man of sin, this king of the north, is going to magnify himself. Let me read you what this verse says. In verse 36 of chapter 11, the king shall do according to his will. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper until the indignation be accomplished. This guy's going to prosper until the indignation of God's wrath against Israel is going to be accomplished, and that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. I say that the meaning of that is, being an Islamist, he doesn't have the religion of his ancient fathers, because the ancient fathers didn't have Islam. They didn't have the prophet Muhammad. They had another God. And he shall not regard the desire of women. Anybody knows that Islam does not regard the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all. And I think what Islam is looking for is the last Mahdi, M-A-H-D-I, the last Mahdi. And by definition, the last Mahdi is what's called the last repository of Allah. The last repository of Allah. In so many words, the Mahdi, the coming Mahdi of Islam, assumes himself to be Allah. Now that's a strong statement, but we've got some evidence that that's true. And verse 38 says, in his estate he'll honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not. He will honor with gold and silver and precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God. Now Islam in modern times is a strange God from anything that came before it, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many. Talking about Muslims, he will cause them to rule over many. This is a hegemonous politician, if you want to call him that. I call him a dictator, a tyrant. He wants that whole Middle East back. He wants to restore the Ottoman Empire. He wants to build the last Islamic caliphate. He wants a global caliphate, and he wants to be its caliph. He wants to be its ruler, and he is trying to be the champion. In fact, in yesterday's Independent there in the United Kingdom, we saw that Erdogan is calling for an international peace force to protect the Palestinians after dozens were killed by Israeli forces in Gaza. Now, anybody knows the facts of this matter understands that Hamas, which is the terror organization down in Gaza Strip, Hamas is actually conducting a military operation they're trying to pass it off as a peaceful demonstration. Anybody with a brain knows it's not a peaceful demonstration. It's a military operation. They're using human shields they've got up there, and trying to provoke Israel IDF soldiers to shoot them. And they use these human shields to run their terrorists in amongst them. And when they start shooting against the terrorists, they lose these so-called innocent citizens, and that causes all these Muslims to scream, genocide, genocide. It's not genocide. This is war. But Erdogan calls for an international peace force to stop Israel. He told folks in Britain just the last day or two that Donald Trump's step to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, move the embassy, and it has upset the whole Arab world and all of its Western allies. You got to understand, this guy Erdogan's a terrorist of himself. I mean, it takes one to know one. He's accusing Israel of being terrorists. He's accusing them of being genocidal. This is the guy that's presiding over the country that committed genocide in Armenia and killed multitudes of Armenians back decades ago. And he's right now declaring war on the Kurds, who are all over eastern Turkey and all over eastern Syria and up in northern Iraq. He's killing off these Kurds by the multitudes, and yet he's screaming bloody murder because he claims that Israel is genocidal. Well, it's not Israel that's genocidal. It's Erdogan that's genocidal. And he's bold. He's brave. He's going all over Europe, campaigning for his presidency, trying to get all these Turkish people all over Europe to get on his side. And while he was in Britain yesterday meeting with Prime Minister May, he told all these European Turks, he said, I am your protector. He urged expatriate Turks to fight back against any discrimination by working their way into power in European capitals. You got to get this. He said the European countries that claim to be the cradles of democracy have failed. He told that to 15,000 supporters in Sarajevo, many of whom had been bussed in from Germany and Australia and the Netherlands. And he claimed that Turks serving in various European governments were working to undermine Turkey, and called on his supporters who live in Europe to get educated and win their own places in those governments. He said European Turks must show their strength to the whole world. I'm telling you, this guy Erdogan is planning on taking over Europe. He's trying to get all his Turkish and Muslim brothers to take over Europe. He wants to get them in political positions. He wants to drive Israel off the map, and we're headed for that. And he is also complicit with this Iranian crowd. Now, this thing gets complicated. You got to understand that before there's going to be a capital before there's going to East Jerusalem capital, this is going to have to be solved by a lot of powers. Donald Trump and Jared Kushner and Greenblatt are not just going to go in there and declare Abu Dis as the capital of East Jerusalem. That's just not going to happen. There's too many powers in there. You still got Fatah in power. You got this old man, Mahmoud Abbas. He's been in the hospital 3 or 4 times this last week. Nobody knows really what all's wrong with him. They said it was an earache, but it looks like he might be dying. Who knows? But so at any rate, if Fatah falls apart anytime soon, then the whole West Bank is going to go crazy, and Hamas is going to try to take over the place that Fatah has had. And if we get a Hamas terrorist government in the West Bank, and if it's unified with Gaza, you're talking about a nightmare of nightmares for Israel. And but it's not just Hamas that's trying to get in here. It's Hezbollah as well. Now, just reading today how that Hamas and Hezbollah are working together. They really are teaming up to do this. And Hezbollah is all over the northern borders of Israel. Hezbollah has taken over Lebanon. They literally run the government in Lebanon. They've got they got thousands and thousands of Iranian missiles there in Lebanon, and they've got and Hezbollah has got bases all over Syria, and they've moved in military goods all over Syria, and they're doing their very best to take over Syria. And they're working in complicity with Assad, the president of Syria. It's a crazy thing. And you know, last week when these Hezbollah types shot 20 missiles over toward the border, Israel took advantage of that opportunity to bomb the smithereens out of them, and they destroyed just about everything that had any kind of Iranian identity to it. And even in the last day or so, I read that they were bombing another installation just south of Damascus. So Israel is going after all this Iranian influence. And Iran and Turkey both are huge threats against Israel and against the West. Anybody knows that Donald Trump has just recently canceled this nuclear agreement with Iran, and it stirred up all kind of trouble. And Europe is showing themselves to be stupid about this thing. They're trying to side with Iran, of all people. They don't want to take an economic hit by losing all their business with Iran. But now, as of this very day, the Secretary of State of the United States spoke to the Heritage Foundation and said to the whole world that this is Mike Pompeo I'm talking about. Mike Pompeo told the world today that America is about to pronounce the strongest sanctions in history on Iran. I mean, the United States is fixing to choke Iran to death. They're fixing to cut off all financial connections to Iran, and they're not just going to sanction Iran, they're going to sanction everybody in Europe that's helping out Iran. So I don't believe we've ever seen this kind of a sanction take place before. Pompeo's dead serious, and you know how Trump is. He's not going to settle for anything less than what he wants. So we're going to see Iran's fixing to choke. And they're not going to choke without a fight. They're going to get mean. They're going to get nasty. They're going to try to cut deals with all the other Arab nations. They're going to make deals with Erdogan of Turkey. And before this thing's over, you can believe this: East Jerusalem is not going to be settled peacefully. There ain't nobody going to go in there with a contract and sign it. But here's what I think is going to happen. I think that Erdogan's going to take over this whole negotiation process. He's going to be the big mouth of it all. He's not going to sit down and shut up. In fact, I told somebody yesterday, I don't think this guy ever sleeps. It looks like he's plotting trouble every minute of the day and night. And every day he's making more and more provocative statements against Israel, more and more provocative statements against the United States. And he's trying his best, trying his dead level best to get all the Muslims in the world to cheer him on. He is wanting to be the leader of the entire Muslim world. And if he ever succeeds at that, we're going to have big trouble. He's a member of NATO. Turkey's a member of NATO, and he's going to cause all kind of trouble for the West via NATO. There's just more than I can talk about here about this guy. He's a bombastic troublemaker and he's a radical Islamist. So what I think is going to happen is you're not going to get an East Jerusalem capital by a declaration alone. Now, there is going to be a declaration. The Bible tells us in Daniel chapter 9 that the Prince of Rome, speaking of the Roman Catholic bishop, speaking of the Pope of Rome, is going to confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. The Bible said in the midst of that week, the sacrifice and the oblation is going to cease. Now, the Pope and Erdogan, you watch what I tell you. The Pope and Erdogan will work together on this. I believe that this confirmation of the covenant is going to be a collusion between the Pope and this man Erdogan. Erdogan's probably the guy that's going to finally put the last deal on the table and tell the world, you either do this or we're going to tear the place up. And I think that Erdogan is fixing to make a statement. I expect him eventually to make a statement of what he actually wants. I think Erdogan's going to be the man that demands to get things his way. Nobody's got a bigger mouth than he does. Nobody's got a bigger voice in the Islamic world than he does. And I think he's going to finally be the guy that's going to step in and take over this whole Palestinian-Israeli negotiation process, and he's going to put the deal on the table. And I think if and when this guy Erdogan ever puts a deal on the table, the Pope is going to confirm it. And if and when that happens, that could very well be the confirmation of the covenant. Now listen, I've been wrong about a lot of stuff, and I'll probably be wrong again, but it doesn't mean that we're not supposed to look at this stuff. If you take a look at a puzzle on the table and you look at these pieces and you say, wow, this piece goes here, and you put it over there and it works. You put another piece and it works. You might put a piece in the wrong place, but sooner or later you're going to figure it out and you're going to take it out of that place and put it in the right place. And that's all I know how to do when it comes to Bible prophecy. There's one thing I'm not going to do. I'm not going to quit working on this puzzle. This thing is too important. These Bible prophecies has everything to do with my future, and if you had any sense, you'd know it has everything to do with your future. And all you folks that don't want to talk about prophecy, you need to get serious about God. God gives us this prophecy so we will be prepared for the days that are ahead. And there's a whole lot of misinformation about the end of the age. There's a whole lot of misinformation about how all these prophecies are going to work out, and a lot of people are going to be hurt. A lot of people are going to be lost. A lot of people are going to backslide. A lot of people are going to take the mark of the beast, because they've never been taught the truth of what the Bible says about Bible prophecies. And that's one of the reasons I'm on Facebook Live. That's the reason I produce all these videos and publish them to YouTube, is because I'm trying to tell the world what the Bible says. I'm not telling you I'm 100% right on everything I say, but I'll stand behind everything I say until somebody shows me better. I believe we are looking at the last generation. I believe the last generation started in 1948 when Israel was born, and I believe that this month is the 70th year in the last generation. That tells me it can't be long before we see this last 7 years of Bible prophecy unfold. That's going to lead us all the way down to the great and final battle of Armageddon. You better get smart about this stuff. You better start paying attention, and that's why we're teaching all this stuff. Now, I've got into a lot of stuff here tonight, and maybe you understand it, maybe you won't. You can come back later on after I republish it, and you look at all this stuff again. Meanwhile, you ought to also go to Amazon and pick up my book, The Daniel Prophecies, God's Plan for the Last Days. Now, ever since I wrote this book, I've been teaching out of this book, and I can tell you the one thing, I don't know of anything significant in that book that I would change. Everything I wrote in that book, I stand behind it. There's maybe a few little minor details that turned out a little different what I thought. But overall, this book, The Daniel Prophecies, is one of the most targeted, one of the most right-on books on prophecy you're ever going to find, and I believe every Christian, every Spirit-filled believer needs to read this book, The Daniel Prophecies, God's Plan for the Last Days. So go to Amazon, if you will, search on Amazon for books by Ken Raggio, and you'll see all those books there. Order them. All right, God bless you. I'm glad you came to be with me tonight. I'm going to be on the road Thursday night. I may make just a short Facebook Live from the road. If not, I'll see you again next Monday night here on Facebook Live. God bless you. I'll see you next time.